Alright, gang. Today we're talking about the second pair of short treks from CBS, The Brightest Star and The Escape Artist. But first, let's get this formality out of the way.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
Saru started out his life as a seaweed harvester. Hey, don't knock it. Seaweed is a superfood. And Kelpians are themselves harvested the same as Saru harvested that seaweed. It is tragic and mysterious. Kelpians actually revere the process of being culled. If cows had a religion, maybe it might look like it does with Saru's people. The Baul, the overlords of the Kelpians, accidentally leave behind some technology. Saru uses the opportunity to illustrate his curiosity and exceptional nature. Man, Kelpians are really devoted to their religious worldview. The Baul must be invested in this arrangement as well, which means that the Kelpians must taste delicious. Saru modifies the Baul tech to send out a message to whatever is beyond the skies. Did we mention Saru was exceptional? Oh yes. Oh look, a text message. Saru grows increasingly dissatisfied with a traditional life. He longs to leave it behind. And Saru gets his chance. A message finally comes in. Today is the day. Saru's pen pal has arrived, and it's Philippa Georgiou. Neat. Our hero must make a choice.
Okay, so Kelpians. While Discovery is still finding its footing as the Trek franchise's premier Prime Universe outing, Saru has emerged as a fan favorite.
His tall, slender, fearful ways are expertly played by Doug Jones. If you aren't too familiar with Mr. Jones, know that this is a guy who loves to cosplay. Does well under a mountain of prosthetics, I mean. And his resume is very impressive. Here he is in Pan's Labyrinth. And as a sexy fish man in the shape of water. You see? Sexy. For The Brightest Star, Doug Jones's portrayal of Saru is as good as it's ever been. And we learn quite a lot about the planet Kaminar and the Kelpian people, too. Kelpians are pre-warp, pre-electric even. They live out a modest existence under the heel of an oppressive religious doctrine that basically casts Kelpians as cattle, subservient to a mysterious unseen race called the Baul. Kelpian culture is painted as simplistic and rather thin. Their religion, too, is thin and uncomplex. But this is typical for Star Trek. Races are presented monoculturally, and often, especially where religion is concerned, the viewer is presented with all the pertinent details and only a few lines of dialogue. If we consider this to be a normal way in which Trek discusses religion and culture, then The Brightest Star hits the target well enough, although we certainly would love to know more. It may be that Kelpians are described a little more thinly than normal, but this is a short trek. We only have about 15 minutes. Saru emerges from this Kelpian context freakishly quickly as a genius of his people, seeing through the veneer of this religious perspective and making his way not just through the concept of electricity, but of engineering and computer code as well. Saru is very smart, and he is driven to know more about the universe. He can conceive more about that universe than anyone he knows. His smarts even get him a ticket to see that universe. Starfleet is made by people like this. As far as short treks go, this is pretty good. It may be a little too short for some of the concepts that are being discussed, but it certainly fares better than the first short trek, a quick side adventure with the fabulous Ensign Tilly called Runaway. One of the ideas being explored in this visit to Kaminar is that of the Prime Directive, and sequentially, this is the first of a series of complex Prime Directive questions that Season 2 of Discovery is asking. If Saru is so exceptional that he can figure out what modern life is about on his own, and so quickly, does the Prime Directive apply to him specifically? Does it still apply to his people? Is he bound to that directive himself now that he knows the truth? In other words, can Saru, as a representative of all Kelpians, who broke the barrier of ignorance, can he go back and tell everyone on Kaminar the truth? I'll speak on that more in a moment, but know that this is a fairly meaty outing for this modern age of Star Trek. We find the Brightest Star to be a good proof-of-concept edition of the Short Treks format. Like our dream anthology version of Star Trek, we get a succinct, pleasant outing to a world and a race in the Trek universe, and it adds to the character of Saru as well.
But what does this reveal about Kaminar, about Saru, and about the Star Trek multiverse?
Apart from learning how weird and dire the Kelpian predicament is, and by contrast how exceptional Saru is, the Prime Directive, or General Order 1, is a topic front and center with the Brightest Star. Up until now, Trek has given the impression that the Prime Directive is to be applied society-wide. Their development should proceed, quote, naturally.
It's their custom, Chief. Under the Prime Directive, we have no right to interfere.
Despite enormous temptation and strong personal feelings, he obeyed the Prime Directive. His temporary blackout of the city below resulted in no interference with the society, and yet saved the lives of myself and the landing party.
Maybe there's some way that...
Don't even think about it, Tom. The Prime Directive is clear. We cannot allow our presence to alter this planet's natural course of events.
Even if the natural course of events is annihilation?
This is to protect the natural development of that species, and to protect from knowledge of aliens, which is seen as detrimental somehow.
Beverly, the Prime Directive is not just a set of rules. It is a philosophy, and a very correct one. History has proved again and again that whenever mankind interferes with a less developed civilization, no matter how well-intentioned that interference may be, the results are invariably disastrous.
Forgetting how silly this rule is, how it is an artifact of a kind of social Darwinism or colonial mindset, Star Trek shows the Prime Directive being broken more often than being followed. And that is down to how much gray area there is in determining who gets to know that aliens exist and who doesn't.
If we do what it seems we must, in my opinion, we'll be in direct violation of the non-interference directive.
These are people, not robots.
And in that gray area, sometimes, societies figure out the truth anyways, without warp technology. Or sometimes they are inadvertently shown the truth. When you add it all up, the Prime Directive causes more problems than it claims to solve. And Saru is a perfect example. Saru is painted as so exceptional and skeptical of his inherited worldview that when a piece of Baul technology lands in his lap, he is able to work out not only how to turn it on, but also how to manipulate it. He manages to communicate with a Federation citizen. Conceivably, he would have worked out the alienness of that citizen compared to his own nature. Indeed, when Philippa Georgiou shows up, Saru is surprised at it all, but not the part about her being an alien. Does this mean that the Kelpians realize that the Baul are aliens? Saru has only ever described the Baul as a predator species. Or is it just that Saru has worked out the truth on his own? If an individual can figure out that aliens exist and that faster-than-light travel is possible, then what is the Prime Directive protecting that individual from? Is that person meant to hide their new galactic perspective from their society? And what happens when an individual is liberated to the Federation, and that individual eventually feels the need to, in turn, liberate his people? Extrapolating out, what happens if a society does figure out the truth as a whole? Aliens, warp drive, the whole thing. But there are members of society who refuse this new truth, like an alien version of the Amish, a group of people here in the real world who shun modern technology. Does the Prime Directive apply to that subset within a society? Who gets to draw the line? Apologies to any Amish people. You shouldn't be watching this anyway. On the Federation side of things, and perhaps moving a little more into that gray area, it's an open question as to why Georgiou was allowed to make contact with Saru. Our guess is that the plight of the Kelpians is pretty dire and known galaxy-wide, and that, Prime Directive or no, the Federation must be sympathetic to whatever nightmare is chewing through the Kelpian race. Starfleet might certainly have been interested in helping Saru on humanitarian grounds, but it's possible those grounds were also strategic. Maybe the whole galaxy knows about the Kelpian situation in the same way that we observe and sometimes aid the plight of refugees here in the real world. We tend to watch more than we aid.
The Brightest Star presents a good take on the complexity of this antiquated rule, the Prime Directive. As a matter of fact, this complicated perspective is being explored in Season 2 of Discovery. And no spoilers, but Saru is involved. Enough of that, let's move on to the adventures of Harry Mudd.
Looks like Harry Mudd is on the bad end of another bad situation. Oh, Mudd.
I bet you never thought you'd see this place again, did you?
And it's about to get worse for him. We get to hear Mudd's rap sheet, and it is glorious.
One count of attempted regicide.
Regicide? He was a duke.
Upon the character's internal reflection, we are introduced to the litany of similar situations that have befallen Mudd before.
Well, maybe I have been falsely accused once or twice.
In an attempt to talk his way out of imprisonment, Mudd reveals that he did take the family heirloom of this Tellarite, and that he sold it to fund the resistance against the Federation.
I really shouldn't be telling you this, but I am a member of the Resistance.
With the Resistance, yeah.
I am with the Resistance.
What? We get more flashbacks of Mudd trying to talk his way out of capture, something that seems to happen frequently. Mudd's usual pedantic maneuvers fall on defiant ears, and defiant green ears, even. Tavern Crit prepares to hand Mudd over to Starfleet.
Take me home with you. I'll polish your tusks. Anything, but just don't hand me over to them, please.
Wow, Mudd is really not interested in the Federation life. All seems to be going Tavern's way until it is revealed that Harry Mudd is a master of androids.
Someone took you for a ride.
Harry Mudd's deception is made clear. He's been manufacturing android replicants of himself and selling them to the highest bidder. Not an honorable trade, but certainly a capitalist one.
True, but the 22nd rule says a wise man can hear profit in the wind.
I see you know your rule.
The Escape Artist is a tragic tale of woe, where the universe continues to kick our unlucky protagonist when he's down. Just kidding. Harry Mudd deserves to be kicked.
But he's not down in this fourth short trek. Mr. Mudd has figured out a way to game this system. He has developed a closet full of Harry Mudd look-alike androids in order to profit from his status as a wanted vagabond conman of the galaxy. And it works, too. Just goes to show you what an entrepreneur can do with a few good androids.
If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
Like Saru, Rainn Wilson's version of Harry Mudd is another Discovery crowd favorite, and this short trek banks on that likability. Mudd's antics take center stage in exactly the manner we'd expect. He is clever, sly, talkative, much like his appearances in the first season.
This ends now. Did you miss me as much as I missed you, Mudd?
Once upon a time, there was the whisper of a possibility that a Harry Mudd series could happen. That was a long time ago now. But the possibility does say something about Harry Mudd's appeal to the audience. The Escape Artist, in Rainn Wilson's performance, encourages the same love for the lovable rogue.
Actually, Kirk, as a defender of the free enterprise system, I found myself in a rather ambiguous conflict as a matter of principle.
He did not pay royalties.
Knowledge, should be free to all.
So there is nothing to fault and much to love in this episode, even if he did penetrate a space whale along the way.
And one count of penetrating a space whale?
You kind of had to be there.
My particular favorite here is the character of Tavern Crit, the Tellarite. I love a good pair of tusks. Harry Mudd's android use foreshadows a period in his life when his association with androids gets him into a lot of trouble. However, it is the offhand remarks, the context, the world building in The Escape Artist that bears some examination. I'm talking about Federation economics.
Now, we don't really know much about the economics of the 23rd and 24th century Earth and the Federation. The franchise is understandably quiet about planting flags onto whichever 20th century economic ideology people are still fighting about these days. Star Trek has only ever said things will get better. Even so, the franchise has offered up hints about possible economic systems, little bits of world building that are sometimes purposeful and sometimes accidental.
Money doesn't exist in the 24th century.
No money? You mean you don't get paid?
The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves.
Do characters make money? No. But also yes? I mean, Starfleet officers don't seem to collect a paycheck, yet at least on Deep Space Nine, they always had enough latinum to spend at Quark's bar. Characters understand money, at least how money works on paper, but we don't see too much economic activity. The most satisfying explanation is that Earth of the future is so abundant, so technologically sophisticated that maybe money exists and is used, but that it is such a trivial thing that it just doesn't matter in the grand scheme. It's maybe useful only if you bump into a Ferengi somewhere. This concept is a tiny part of an excellent speculative article by Rick Webb, where Mr. Webb describes the universe of the Federation as a proto-post-scarcity economy.
It's an interesting read, a little complicated, but the details are fun. I'll leave a link in the subspace below. However, Harry Mudd, presumably a citizen of the Federation, thrives on get-rich-quick schemes and making off with valuables from other races, like cudgels.
Cudgel? Is that? Are you saying cudgel? I've never heard of that. Is that some sort of kitchen implement?
There's a bounty on Mudd's head in Federation credits.
They slapped 100,000 credit bounty on your head?
And a reference to Latinum too, which happens a lot.
Follow me. Do you transfer the Latinum to my account, or just give it to me in one big bar?
Besides, those vouchers I gave you were every bit as good as Latinum.
You can spend Latinum almost anywhere. Those vouchers are only good at your bar.
Frankly, it is all confusing. Maybe the Federation, or at least Earth in this future, is some sort of proto-post-scarcity democratic socialist utopia. Even there, in that gleaming future, Harry Mudd will still take your stuff.
How much do you think a Starfleet officer makes anyway? Never mind, you couldn't pay me enough to have someone else's lizard babies.
Overall, there isn't much philosophically to chew on with The Escape Artist, except that Mudd's questionable nature doesn't make a lot of sense in a relative utopia like the Federation. At least on Earth, things have gotten a lot better than they are now.
It unites humanity in a way that no one ever thought possible when they realize they're not alone in the universe. Poverty, disease, war, they'll all be gone within the next 50 years.
Why turn toward a life of crime when technology can provide most of what is needed in life? Maybe Mudd's life choice is the result of desire. Maybe that's what he wants to do. Or maybe he suffers from narcissistic personality disorder. Perhaps he is driven to be a con man because he cannot get the adequate care he needs. Maybe Federation health insurance doesn't cover mental health. More to the point of the franchise, how does The Escape Artist impact Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery? I don't know. But if I were a betting human, I'd say that the crew of Discovery winds up encountering a Mudd android somewhere in the second half of the second season. Fingers crossed. A Mudd encounter of that sort ought to be all rainbows and sunshine.
Chippers on a beach, chippers on a beach, chippers on a beach. If I had any money, I'd be sipping chippers on a beach. Chippers on a beach, chippers on a beach.
Congrats for making it all the way to the end of this video. Your reward is 25 points. If you'd like to see more Trexpertise in the multiverse, then consider chipping in to support the channel. Help us hire a second editor and double the channel's output. You can do this by supporting us over on Patreon. At only $1 to $2 per month, you can help us greatly increase the quality and quantity of Trexpertise. Link in the subspace below. A note, if you are currently keeping up with the second season of Star Trek Discovery, then we recommend you check out our immediate post-episode analysis on Twitter under this handle, and our full-length reviews, which appear a couple of days later over on Medium under this handle. We will be doing a full end-of-season video review. Keep your eyes peeled for that. As always, subscribe, turn on notifications, or sign up for our no-nonsense email list if you'd like to be notified when the next video is uploaded. And do check out the brand new podcast, WikiSurfer, put together by Brandon Phibbs and Kyle Sullivan. Hey, that's me. WikiSurfer is an experiment in podcast storytelling. In fact, here is a quick sample from our holiday episode. Let us know what you think. Thanks. See you soon.
Diocletian failed, of course, and his successor, Constantine, made Christianity the empire's preferred religion. And he also released Nicholas from prison.
Ho, ho, ho!
Soon thereafter, Nicholas discovered that 3 innocent men were about to be executed for a crime they didn't commit. He unarmed the executioner and set them free. Well, that's the simplest version of the story. Others include a far larger narrative with violent rebellion, looting, bribery, and corruption that includes Nicholas speaking to people through their dreams. In 325 AD, Nicholas was said to have attended the First Council of Nicaea, at which the bishops were working out Christianity's early dogma. There, Nicholas supposedly signed the newly written Nicene Creed, though many historians believe his name was added long after the fact. To explain this, a story was put forward more than 1,000 years later, in which Nicholas supposedly lost his temper and slapped a bishop with whom he had a theological disagreement. As punishment, he was defrocked. Later versions of this legend embellish it further still. Nicholas punched the heretic, was thrown in prison, and was visited in his cell by Christ and the Virgin Mary, who set him free and reinstated him.